with thanks to the Desert Rat for this historical documentation. Some years ago, Bill sent me this hand drawing he made of J-Rod 1, as he himself became known as J-Rod 2. Note the skull, the hands, and long, strong fingers, and the alien's demeanor. This is not a proud but rather scared-looking being, huddled up in an army jacket. The alien's hands are strong and heavy-boned, with long, strong fingernails. Bill was to be seen wearing a logo with J-Rod 3 on it. Who or what this refers to remains unknown. Bill gave me this photograph of a pilot wearing a Gray's fake mask in the cockpit of a US Air Force tank buster jet. This posed photograph reveals much about J-Rod. It shows it's an allowed US Air Force picture of an alien on a US Air Force base. It tells us we have aliens in our bases and we work with them, and they fly our craft and we do theirs. Uhouse is described in the Desert Rat with the codename J-Rod. J-Rod spent most of his career at the test sites, one of which appears to be in the Los Alamos laboratories in New Mexico. He does not talk about specific facilities, but does mention Area 51 as the test site in the interview that follows. Uhouse states directly that they want the leaks. They don't want to be caught out in the big lie. Uhouse mentions 4 types of aliens that he dealt with. One of them were the Greys. He describes their planets and their culture. Bill agreed to talk to me on camera, so we give you the entire Bill Uhouse interview on a late, sunny afternoon in December in eastern Nevada. Well, it's
but
Bill,
you can watch.
It's Bill Uhouse. Tell us what's going on, what's happening.
In what areas?
51 UFOs. What's happening down in the alien bases?
Alien down underneath.
Yeah.
Last September I gave a lecture up at Rachel, Nevada with Anthony Hilder. And of course Anthony was looking for certain information and asked me if I've ever been to, on the test site. And I had, but only on various different particular projects. They were small projects, but not for any extended period. It's 3 weeks now, maybe a month, at intervals. But they were all on specific projects, not necessarily to do with flying saucers. There were some questions on the tunnels out there at the test site. And they questioned me whether I had been in tunnels, and I had been in tunnels. As far as the nuclear aspect is concerned, they have built tunnels for testing of various devices in certain mountains out there. And also they've drilled and exploded bombs, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 feet below the desert floor. But on a specific tunnel that I was in, you could fit 2 locomotives going in either direction, plus a center road with a tractor-trailer truck for hauling parts and stuff. I know that of only one tunnel that I've been in where we did some testing of a particular item, and this was about approximately 6 miles into the mountain. In a facility in that mountain that was specifically set aside for my group and my team. Those particular items that I worked on was basically technologically some science that was related to flying disc, but not necessarily for a flying disc. It was for a different project. There's so many different projects out there, and of course the facility that I worked at, that there's just too numerous to mention. Plus I can't identify code names, and I can't identify companies, although there are a number of different representatives from various different companies that are completely involved in this alien technology and the transfer of technology for the new aircraft or the flying discs.
Are you talking about the Aurora or stuff like that?
In some cases, the Aurora, where they tested various different devices. In some cases, the F-117, where they had applied some of this technology for certain devices in the craft to more or less test them out, just like any other program that would test a new item out on something that we know how to fly, and it's a little bit different than a flying disc in that application.
So what are the latest technologies that they're using out there, the latest craft? You mentioned earlier about simulators.
I only had to do with simulators, and as you know, when they design a new craft or a company develops a new craft, there's always a simulator that's being built right alongside of the craft that they're going to fly. Whether it's the F-117 or the Aurora or any other new aircraft.
So are there alien discs out there?
Are there aliens out here at Area 51? I don't know of aliens out there at Area 51, though.
Are there areas that you prefer not to talk about or not?
There are aliens that I know of in other facilities throughout the country, but not at Area 51. There could be. I'm sure there is.
What type of aliens would it be?
The aliens that they have, there's only a few that are here. They're the Greys, or the grayish, so to speak, that type of individual. I don't understand this case about the reptilians. I know that where these individuals come from, it's not set up like here on Earth where you have the different races, the Chinese, Japanese, and so forth. The difference in those particular individuals, they're on different planets. For example, you got in the Zeta Reticuli star system, there's a number of different planets there. There's Harlequin, there's Dorado, there's many others. For example, those particular individuals that are on each one of those planets do a different thing. They're not basically like we are set up here on Earth, okay? Well, I guess you could say that, for example, I'm talking about religion now, you got Buddhism, and you got the Mideast, Arabic, religions and so forth and so on. And you got the Catholics and so forth. It's not necessarily like that. It's they only have one religion, and it's not the same as we know it. Theirs is more or less a spiritual type religion. They don't have a church they go to. They don't go to church every Sunday. It's nothing specific like that.
How does one know this?
How does one know that? Well, you have to go through a long period of I don't want to say acclimation, but it's a long period of understanding and knowing what questions to ask, and trying to understand how I got it. Okay, because that information, a lot of it is like asking me what they eat, or what do they want from us, and that type of thing. And each one of those from those different planets could be different in what they really want from this planet. It could be like, I don't understand the abduction scenario. I don't understand the various different, so they speak, number of different aliens that are supposedly coming here. From what I understand, there's maybe only no more than 6 different species, if that, and not the 70 or 73 that John Laird talks about.
So in what other facilities would the aliens be?
Mostly the facilities that are located in Arizona, New Mexico. Delsey? It's a possibility.
So you're being non-specific, but they are in other areas.
I don't know all of the areas. I've never been really underground to determine that, okay? It's, like I said, I was in one underground facility. It was out here at Area 50. Not necessarily 51, but it was in...
Are they all the same area?
Well, if you went into the test site, you've got certain orders. You go to a certain location, and unless you know the facility, if you walked in there blindly like yourself, or they took you for a ride, you wouldn't know where you are on that test site.
There's nothing marked.
Unless you could tell which direction you were going. There's generally nothing marked. Which direction, or if you could track the miles, you know, that you went from the time that you were able to see outside of a particular bus or vehicle that you were in.
And you've flown in from...
I've flown in and I've driven in. So, you know, to go into any of those facilities, you know, and underground facilities, I know there's plenty of them, but how that happens, you know, and who's got the responsibility or the authority to go in there is just, I was never privy to that information.
Essentially, what makes one think it's aliens as opposed to just having a legitimate top secret base, which is underground, protect themselves from nuclear weapons?
Protect themselves from what?
Well, I mean, one would naturally assume that one's going to have secret bases. A, they're going to be secret. B, they're going to be underground in case of nuclear.
Well, where's everything going nowadays? I don't care if it's in England or the United States, it's all going underground.
Do you know of any bases or heard of any bases in England?
Bases of aliens?
Yeah.
I have not necessarily heard of any particular bases just for the aliens.
Both military.
I think you're looking at both. You're looking at whether they may be Englishmen or U.S. citizens or Germans, you know, as far as working with those particular individuals. That I was never privy to. But you could probably assume that there are, and there, like I told another gentleman, that to really get to see an alien, okay, if you, in the case where you've got the confidence level, that level of security, it takes like many years. It takes several years before you're even cleared to even get to that point. If you got a Q classification, you may get a certain level. You may go up to say 10 above Q, or you may go to 20, depending on the area or what your involvement is, okay, and how much they trust you. You know, these organizations are run no differently than a particular government. You got in this facility, and I can't mention it. It's like one government or one country, but it's in a small area, and it's controlled like a country, but it's outside of the government. I mean, the top government officials, like, you know, Congress, senators, and so forth. There are probably senators and congressmen that know about this. The only ones that I've ever seen at the facility was, for example, Bush. You know, walking around with a number of different people, so I'm sure that he was very much involved in some way. And you know, he worked for the CIA for many years, or was, you know, in charge of the CIA for many years, and being the vice president and president, so he knew what was going on. There are probably other people, you know, that's involved, but mostly what you're going to find is in this, what I'm going to call is a separate country in a country, but only at a much smaller, you know, scale.
So
on the above ground, you know, where they have, I don't even know if they call them president, chairman, or what, but they have names for them. And I'm sure there's people's names that are in the public limelight that, although they wouldn't say it, are probably tied or connected, you know, to these
So what
groups.
about Bob Lazar, John Lear?
Bob Lazar, what he did, the reason why Bob Lazar was cleared was because of Teller. You know, a guy with that kind of clearance, it'd be pretty easy to get Bob Lazar in his facility. But, you know, and I can understand Bob going to the security. It's very degrading and you know, to the, if, for example, a young fellow like yourself going to a security like that, it would be maybe embarrassing, maybe degrading, or you would, you know, maybe not say the same thing over and over, because you'll go to a number of psychologists before they even say, hey, you're okay. You know, and not knowing what each one's going to ask you, you know, you may not even tell us. You might forget, or, you know, tell the story a little bit different, you know, and that it kind of upset things. But what Bob Lazar's done in his demonstration of putting out this poster with these particular one craft that he called a sport model, from what I know, okay, it's fairly accurate.
So the model that you can buy in the shops, that Bob Lazar's marketing, is an accurate representation?
Well, it's an actual representative of what Bob Lazar knows and what he's seen at the test site.
So those discs are then man-made discs? Are they
That may have not been a man-made disc. The only way I'd be able to tell if it was a man-made disc if I did see the avionics. The avionics and instrumentation, I don't know. You know, like I said, when you're building a simulator, it's got to parallel the craft, so that craft's going to have avionics in it that our science is familiar with, not alien science. Because for the simple reason is, an average or the best pilots on Earth could not get into a alien craft and fly it, because they wouldn't know what they're looking at. They would understand the instrumentation. They wouldn't understand. They'd have to know what each particular box and each instrument in that flight deck, what it represented and what it did. You know, when you push certain buttons in it.
There's no way that we can communicate with the aliens to such a degree that we can understand their language and the way that things operate.
You got to understand. Transfer that technology, their science to our science. There are many people working on with the Greys, or whichever ones they are, to take that information and to write the procedures and to put it into information that's understandable to, say, a PhD that, you know, out of college, or a PhD that's supposedly understands our science. So they could take this information and maybe put it into some kind of design. It's just not that easy.
It's a bit like learning Russian. Even then that's easy.
Well, learning Russian's it's a lot simpler because of their science and their technology is basically, you know, as far as the mathematics are concerned, is very similar to every other country's. Okay, I don't think there's much difference in math here on Earth with the different nationalities.
So have we shared their technology? Are they giving us new technology?
Let me say one thing. Does the United States allow or provide or sell F-117s to Japan or Russia or whatever? No. And the aliens, as far as they're concerned, they're giving us a model like a B-52, which is much older, okay? Or they may give us some of their old F-4s, but it's a flying disc. So the latest technology we don't have. To us, it's fantastic, because, you know, it's new. You know, I don't understand all that. I just don't know.
Do you think that's bullshit? Do you think all that's
No, the story I heard was that, here's a little bit of the story I heard. On the number of crashes that happened, where they impacted the Earth, there was some that were dead, some that were alive. And what they noticed, and it took years for them to, or a few years, for them to finally say, hey, okay, we want to talk, or we want to make contact with, you know, certain humans. It was because of our humane way that we took care of the dead, and we, you know, provided medical attention to the ones that were alive. There were a number of them that were alive that were hurt. And
that's the Roswell crashes. That's the Roswell crash.
You know, I just don't know which crash. But this is the story that I got. So, you know, it's just, you know, it's no different than here on Earth. If we got a country that, you know, their pilot crashed here, you know, and he was alive, we'd help him out, give him medical facility. Well, we did the same thing. So
what was your special interest in all this? What brought you into this subject area?
That's a long story, Miles.
What's your profession?
I'm a mechanical design engineer, but it took a number of years before I knew what was to follow. It was, you know, if you're recruited by I worked at Wright-Patterson. If you're recruited by, say, the government in some aspect or some area or some department, and you're going to work on something that's, say, a very high level of secrecy, you'll be doing things that you don't really understand why you're doing. Before I, you know, even got involved in it, I was assigned to various simulator manufacturers. It's a matter, but what I'm just telling you or passing on this information is I've already passed this information on much earlier at a different group. But I had an okay from a certain individual to do this. Before I start talking, or before I say anything, and I think quite a bit about what I'm going to say and how I'm going to say it, if I hadn't gone back through my peers, I probably wouldn't say it. There's a number of different things I can't say. I can't give you code names. I can't give you individuals. I can't give you companies. I know there's a number of different companies, like I said, not necessarily from this country, but even your country that's involved in this whole scenario. It's well, even the Russians, even before the Cold War stuff, they were involved to some extent.
Does that would imply that they're releasing this information slowly to the public?
In a lot of ways, yes.
And does that pace
they know that the information is getting out. They know that they need certain people out there kind of smoothing the way. You know, like yourself.
Is that going to increase?
I think you'll see more of it. You'll hear about more of it. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you've looked at certain TV programs lately. You know how it is. It's like any other information. There's going to be leaks. They want the leaks. They want certain leaks, not everything. Depending on how they plan to really demonstrate or show that, hey, this is what's been happening. You know, so they're not caught up in the big lie. You know, they don't want to come out and say, hey, we've been doing this since 1947, you know, we have these little dudes and that kind of, they don't want to do it that way. They want to still gain the respect of the population. You know, how many million people in the world now have a feeling that UFOs are something of more than what's some of these wackos are talking about, right? You know, they call these ufologists a bunch of wackos, right? They were until, for example, you had some of these newscasters, well, for one channel, ABC, NBC, and, you know, they did the UFO thing on the Russian sightings and stuff, and they said, you know, they finally said, hey, UFOs are real. And that's it.
They got the Russians to say it was real first.
Yeah, the Russians said it. But we, everybody keeps denying everything. And then, a lot of people would deny, me, right? They'll say, hey, we don't know this guy. It's like Bob Lazar, and I'm sure everything he's saying is true. I don't have any doubt because I know the way that they work. If you've got a security clearance, if you worked in that one facility, say if Bob Lazar worked out at this test site for 20 years, and say these security people had assigned particularly to him to monitor him, and that's the way they work it. They got security agents that are yours forever, and they monitor you and they put the reports in on you. It's not like this guy one day, this guy. It's not that way.
So they know how you work, how you think.
Sure.
Well, thanks very much.
Have a happy summer.
You got it. That was a little bit.